Hey guys, how's it going? I'm so happy to be back because this week was a good week. We learned a lot of things and I want to tell you all about it. As always, I'm going to start off with the little TLDR, the little summary of what I did this week, and then I'm going to go deep into every chapter and everything I did in detail. But the summary of this week is that, as you remember from last week, I had a difficult time studying the last 2 weeks, only doing one chapter a week because I just couldn't focus. And instead of really suffering through it, instead I just did a little bit more surface level tasks like learning a new IDE and just playing around blogs, Medium posts, YouTube posts, just seeing what I can learn that isn't so intense, like reading a book and really studying. So that's kind of what I did last week. But this week, I managed to find a way to fix that, and it turns out that I wasn't doing my usual standing routine, which is that I would stand for around 2 hours studying and then I would sit for the other two, or I would switch it back and forth. And it was a big mistake not to do that. And I used to do that the other weeks, and I hadn't noticed that I had changed it up. But as it turns out, that standing really, really does help me focus intently on the work I'm doing. I mean, I don't have a standing desk, so what I do is I just put it on top of my dresser and I just read from my laptop like that. When it comes time to code, I almost always sit down for that, so this is more for just in general reading or doing problems that don't require basically, me to use an IDE. Now, that is just studying for the chapters. I've managed to do exactly what I said I was going to do. So I did chapters 10, 11, and 12. So I'm almost catching up to where I should have been if I didn't have these 2 weeks that were kind of iffy. But we're doing it, and it was super exciting because I learned a lot, and I managed again just by chance to match the Khan Academy lessons to the chapters. So that was great for me. Learning, really basic level stats and then using the book to do some high level analysis using that stats is just such a perfect pair. It's not for everyone. If you know your basic stats, you're good. But for me, I really want that deep understanding from the very beginning. So that is what I do. Okay, so now that is done. That's the summary of what I did this week. Now, if you want to join me for the rest of the video, I'm going to talk all about in depth each chapter and what I learned from it. So, funny enough, chapter 10 was on regression, and it was actually on least squares. Now, we already know about least squares regression because just that's kind of really basic stats. So, it was kind of an easy chapter to get through. Now, I did Khan Academy before I did this chapter on least squares, so I was actually able to really understand like nuanced and do some calculations by hand before I just got Python to do it for me. So that really helped a lot. Now, in the chapter, we learned about what regression is and a little bit about that. Basically, if you don't know what regression is you find the distance of each point. You do a model, right? And from that model, you find the distance between the actual and the predicted, and that distance is the regression. Now, you have the least squares fit, which is basically a model where you square the distance from each point, and the reason you do that is to give more weight to the heavier ones, the heavier, what does that mean? It gives you more weight to the ones that are actually more far away from the actual point. So if the predicted is too far away, it actually gives it more weight using squaring it, and that gives you a pretty cool model to call the least squares fit. Okay. All right. And chapter 11, funny enough, just continued that. We went from the residual, right, which is the distance from the actual point and the predicted point into actual regression and the coefficient of determination and things like we have the linear regression, we have Poseidon regression, we even have logistic regression, and those are basically just different ways to find a good model, a good fit for your data points. Now, I found this chapter to be almost all new information. Like I said, the Khan Academy stuff is pretty basic, so it really did only touch on the basics of, these squares and the residual and stuff like that. Now, chapter 11 went deeper into the different models and the problems with these models. And one of the best things about this chapter was actually I learned the difference between probability and odds. So this chapter taught us all about odds, and I found that so interesting because it seems like odds and probability are connected. I used to think something like, if for example, if you flip a coin, you have the, you know, percentage of 0.5, so it's a half, right? 1 over 2, and the odds would also be 1 over 2. Those are your odds. Like, for every coin you flip, you have one chance to get uh, heads and then one chance to get tails. But as it turns out that they're actually a little bit different, just to explain data differently sometimes. And I found that very interesting. There's a very simple formula. It's something like P is probability, so P over 1 minus P, I think it is. I'm not really sure. It might be something like that. And I just found that really fascinating because I remember in some problems in stats where they would give you the odds of 3 out of every 5, and then I had to like just draw it out, like draw 5 and then get 3 on one side and 2 on the other to then try to find the probability, in a more general sense. So it's kind of funny how there's actually a formula for that. So that was really fun learning that. And then chapter 12 was on time series, and time series for me was actually pretty interesting because it kind of gave me other basic statistical knowledge on things to use other than the mean, and what to do if you're missing data in a graph. And I found that very interesting. The new term, right? The new stats terms that I learned was rolling average, and that was kind of interesting. The best way I can explain rolling average is the using the rolling mean. So rolling mean, you have a set of almost overlapping windows where you get the mean of the just a group of points, and you keep doing that until the end. So you start off with 3, so now you have 1, 2, 3, and now you get the mean of those and you actually get a number. So then that's your first mean. That's your first data point in this rolling mean chart. And it's basically just another line graph, another way to represent a line graph. And then you then do 1, 2, 3. Sorry, I already said that. You do 1, 2, 3. Then you do 2, 3, 4, and then you do 3, 4, 5. And all those are different means that you then get and you plot, and it's very, very cool what you can basically get out of that. And then that's not even the cool part. The cool part is if you go one step further and you actually get the exponentially rolling average or weighted average, right? I think it's EWMA. Man, I really need to brush up on that. I'm not sure, but I could tell you what you do. You basically, in the EWMA, what you're doing is you're giving, exponential weight to the new point that you brought in and less value to the old point you had. So a good example would be the example before on the weights. I'm sorry, on the rolling mean, where I said 1, 2, 3 2, 3, 4, and you do the means like that. In this case, what you would be doing is in that last number, that 1, 2, 3, the 3 would get more weight, and you would just keep doing that for all the windows or the groups, and you give more weight to the newest point that you added. And that actually gives you a chart that fills in the points that you didn't have. So it actually can help you out a ton. Like I mentioned before, this chapter allows you to figure out what to do when you have missing values, and I find that very good for modeling. So that's kind of just, you know, a snippet on chapter 12. Then it also goes deeper into other time series things like serial correlation, lag, and autocorrelation. So it's just, you know, more. That's kind of what I did this week. I hope you guys enjoyed the in-depth version. Thanks for joining me this whole way. Now I only have 2 chapters left in this, and since we are now back on the 2 chapter a week schedule, now that I figured out that I just got to be standing for half the time while I'm learning, I'm going to finish this chapter this week. And just as promised, this week we're also going to do a EDA, my first EDA. I'm going to do it on COVID dataset, and I chose a dataset already. It's going to be the latest one I can find from Europe. So I'll show you guys how I download the dataset, how I put it into my IDE, how I do, or Jupyter Notebooks. Actually, I'm going to use Jupyter Notebooks. And I'm just going to show you guys my thoughts as I do that, and hope you guys enjoy. So yeah, that's it for this video. So leave me a thumbs up or even a comment if you guys liked, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.